Listen, if you're over 60, you worked your whole life, and somehow the money still doesn't stay, this is for you, because there's an invisible mistake most people make after 60, and that mistake causes money to slip through your fingers, even when you're doing your best, I'm going to be honest, and with care. After 60, working harder usually makes things worse. It's not a lack of faith. It's not laziness. It's the wrong strategy. 3 weeks ago, a 63-year-old woman sat across from me and said, "I helped everyone, and by the end of the month all I have left is fear." She had a fixed income, bills, prescriptions, and the feeling that life had somehow gotten smaller. What I showed her was a principle from Jewish wisdom, explained in a practical, down-to-earth way. After 60, money doesn't come from more effort, it comes from alignment. And I'm going to give you a simple 40-day protocol, something you can do without working more hours, to stop draining your energy and finally stop the money from leaking out. If this sounds like you, comment right now. I activate. That's it. Because today you're going to understand what the invisible mistake is and how to fix it. Take a breath with me for a second. Because if you're listening right now, I know you're not looking for empty promises. You're looking for an explanation that finally makes sense, and for a simple path you can actually follow, without hurting yourself even more. And I want you to feel seen here. 3 weeks ago, a woman sat in front of me. I'll call her Linda just to protect her privacy. She was 63. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were tired, the eyes of someone who spent her whole life holding everything together. She said quietly, almost embarrassed, "I worked. I took care of everyone and I saved when I could. I helped my kids. I never lived large. But the money, it never seems to stay. I look back and think, I did everything right. So why don't I have peace?" And do you know what hit me the hardest? It wasn't the lack of money itself. It was the sense of injustice, the feeling that life keeps moving. And you're left afraid of a bill, afraid of a prescription, afraid of the next month. She told me that whenever an opportunity came up to make a little extra money, she took it immediately. "I need it," she'd say. But that need came at a cost. More exhaustion, more anxiety, more pain in her body. And at the end of the month, almost nothing changed. So I asked her a simple question, and I'm going to ask you the same thing. Do you feel like money comes in, but somehow disappears? Like there's a leak you can't see? Because that's exactly what's happening, and it's not bad luck. It's not that you don't deserve more. And it's not because you're weak. It's because after 60 there's an invisible mistake that good, responsible people make. They try to fix their lives using the same kind of effort that worked at 30 or 40. And that effort turns into a trap. It drains your energy. It clouds your clarity. And without realizing it, you start making decisions that cause money to leave even faster. In a moment, I'm going to show you exactly what this mistake is, very clearly. And I'll tell you this in advance. When you understand it, you'll feel relief, because you'll finally stop blaming yourself. But before I explain, I want you to do something for you right now. If you haven't yet, comment, "I activate." This isn't for me. It's for you, and a way of saying I'm done living in tightness and fear. Now stay with me. Because what comes next is the part almost no one explains. And it's the beginning of your 40-day protocol. Now I'm going to tell you what's really behind this disappearing money. And listen closely, because this will change how you see yourself. After 60, many people try to fix their finances by doing just one thing: working more, saying yes to anything, pushing through. And it looks responsible. It even looks admirable. But there's an invisible error there. The error is this: you're using the same engine you used before. When we're younger, we can compensate for almost anything with energy, urgency, and force. We push harder. We rush. We solve. We take overtime, side gigs, whatever it takes, and it feels like it's working. But after 60, the body collects its debt. The mind does too, your patience does too, and the emotional cost of doing more of the same becomes too high. So what happens? You get tired. You make decisions on impulse, you accept less than you're worth, you blame yourself, and you end up stuck in a cycle that feels impossible to escape. That's why I said this at the beginning. It's not a lack of effort. It's the wrong system for the stage of life you're in. And now I need to make something very clear. A promise, really. What I'm going to teach you here is not magic. It's a repositioning. It's like trying to carry water in a bucket with holes. Instead of running faster, you finally seal the leaks. And this is the heart of the code. After 60, money no longer responds to exhaustion. It responds to alignment. Alignment with 3 simple, practical principles you can apply even with a normal, everyday routine. In a moment, I'll explain the first one, and it's the one that helps you stop feeling useless or past your prime, lies that cruel people sometimes push onto you. But before that, I need you to understand why this code exists and why it has survived across generations, because when you understand where it comes from, something rare happens today. You feel safe, and that feeling is what will keep you with me until the end. I'll be very direct with you because I respect your time. After 60, you either change the system or you spend the next years swimming against a current that only pulls you down. I know that's hard to hear. But a hard truth is still kinder than fragile hope. And let me explain why I can say this with such certainty. I'm not here repeating pretty phrases from the internet. I've spent decades listening to stories like Linda's and watching the same pattern repeat itself. Honest, hard-working people who did everything right, but reached an age where effort no longer brought the same return. And at the same time, I noticed something else. People the same age, with less energy, but more peace, more stability, more dignity, as if the money had finally stopped slipping away. So what was the difference? They changed where they were operating from. And that place isn't physical. It's internal. It's strategic. I learned this very early, inside my own family. My grandfather used to tell me something I never forgot. There comes an age when the game changes, and if you don't change with it, you lose. He said it seriously, like someone who knew the cost of not understanding that shift. And he always said that turning point begins around 60, because from that point on, what sustains you is no longer strength. It's applied wisdom, and this is where what I call the code comes in. It's not a mystical secret, it's a set of ancient and very practical principles used by families who lived through wars, migrations, economic crashes and starting over, and still learned how to build protection and prosperity. And the core of this code is simple. After 60, money doesn't come from raw effort. It comes from alignment. Alignment with 3 pillars. And I'm going to give you all 3, one by one, as clearly as possible, with real stories and simple exercises you can do at home without depending on anyone. But pay attention. The first principle already begins to change your life today, because it gives back something many women slowly lose over time, and that honestly breaks my heart. It gives back your value. Let's go there now. The first principle of the code comes from an ancient word, but the idea is very simple. Vina. Vina means deep understanding. Not being smart, not studying more. It means seeing clearly what has value, when it has value, and why it has value. After 60, many people try to sell strength. They try to sell time. They try to sell availability. But that wears you down. It shrinks you, and it puts you in the position of asking. Vina does the opposite. It places you in a position where you're sought out. And to make this very concrete, I want to tell you the story of a woman. Because if you're like most women who listen to me, you carried more than you ever should have. I met Helen. She was 63. Helen worked for nearly 4 decades as an administrative assistant. She was the one who fixed everything. If the office was in chaos, they called her. She knew deadlines, paperwork, difficult personalities. All the small daily emergencies no one else wanted to touch. When she retired, her income dropped, and like many people, she thought, I'll just find another job, anything. She sent out resumes, asked for referrals, applied for simple roles. Nothing. And what hurt the most wasn't the lack of a yes. It was the message hidden in the silence. You're too old. I watched her throat tighten when she said, It feels like I'm not useful anymore. I looked at Helen and asked her a question that changes everything. When someone answers honestly, in all these years, What did you learn that most people don't actually know how to do well? She went quiet. She thought. And then her eyes changed. She said, I know how to organize systems. I know how to build routines. I know how to take a mess and make it work. I know how to create structure that saves a business time and money. And I said to her, then why are you trying to get hired like you're just anyone, when what you have is exactly what small businesses need most? She reacted the way many women do. But I don't have a degree in that. I don't have a big name. Who's going to listen to me? And I answered, you have something no course can sell. You have mileage, you have scars, you have real-world practice. The next week, Helen did something small, but brave. She wrote a simple introduction about herself, positioning herself as a professional who helps small businesses organize their admin, reduce rework, and bring order to daily operations. She didn't promise miracles. She promised clarity. And this is where Veena shows up. Instead of selling hours, she started selling outcomes. Instead of saying, I can work, she started saying, I can fix this. Her first client was a woman who owned a small medical clinic. Everything was behind. Billing, schedules, inventory, total chaos. Helen came in calmly, assessed the situation, and created a simple plan. Within a week, the clinic could breathe again. And do you know what happened? The clinic owner referred Helen to 2 other people. Those 2 referred her to others. Within a few months, Helen was working fewer hours than before and earning more than she ever did trying to fit into a job posting. But the most important thing, she could look at herself in the mirror again and with respect. Because money doesn't just change your bank account, it changes the weight on your chest. Now let this land. After 60, your value is not in your hands. It's in your mind. You don't need to run faster, you need to see more clearly, and I know you might be thinking, but I don't have a special skill. You do. You just call it normal, because you did it for years. And that's exactly where the gold is. You learned how to care. You learned how to organize. You learned how to deal with people. You learned how to hold everything together when no one was watching. That is Veena. It's taking that experience and turning it into something clear, useful, and valued. And in the next part, I'm going to give you a 7-day exercise that puts your gold mine on paper. It often gets emotional because many people realize they spent their entire lives underestimating what they actually know. Let's go. Now, if you want to turn this first principle into something real, not just nice to hear, I'm going to give you a very simple exercise, and I ask you to do it exactly the way I describe, because most people either do it halfway or rush through it, and then wonder why nothing changes. For 7 nights in a row before going to bed, take a notebook and answer one single question. Just one. What do I know how to do that very few people do as well as I do? And pay attention. This is not about degrees, it's not about job titles. This is about life. Here's the rule. You must write 10 items, even if it feels hard at first. If that voice comes up saying, this is silly, write anyway. It might be, I know how to calm people in a crisis. I know how to manage bills so nothing falls through the cracks. I know how to make meals stretch and feed a whole family. I can tell when someone isn't being honest. I know how to keep a household running. I know how to care for someone who's sick. I know how to handle difficult children. I know how to negotiate without turning it into a fight. I know how to solve problems quietly without drama. I know how to guide someone younger. All of this is wisdom. And let me tell you something many women need to hear. Most of the time, it's not that you have no value. It's that you spent so many years being strong. You forgot to name what you actually do. When you put it on paper, you begin to see something that shifts your posture. I am not disposable. I am useful. I have value. Then, right below those 10 items, you're going to ask a second question. Who could benefit from this and how can I help without enslaving myself? Because the point is not to work more. The point is to create a path where you don't destroy yourself just to survive. And this is where many people get it wrong. They finally realize they have value, and then try to make up for lost time by doing more, taking on too much, overloading themselves, and then the body collects its debt. That's why the second principle of the code is what sustains the first. Because without it, you might have wisdom, but you're still tired, anxious, and stuck in sacrifice mode. The second principle is a word many people confuse with weakness, but I'm going to show you that it's actually strategy. And when you understand this, you'll stop feeling guilty for resting. Let's go there now. The second principle of the code is a word that sounds simple, but it's what separates those who age with peace from those who age in exhaustion. Menucha. Menucha is not doing nothing. Menucha is rest with purpose. I'm going to say this very directly because you need to hear it without decoration. After 60, the more you try to make up for it by working harder, the less money actually stays with you. I know that feels unfair. I know your mind may push back and say, but I've always worked, I've always been responsible. But there comes a point in life when the body no longer accepts being treated like a machine. And when you force it, you pay twice. You pay with your health and you pay with your income. There's a psychological reason behind this. When you live exhausted, you make worse decisions. You accept less than you deserve. You underprice yourself. You put yourself in a smaller position, and the world feels that. Now let me tell you a story that might shock you, and at the same time, give you hope. I met Marie. She was 66. Marie had a real gift. She made homemade desserts that everyone raved about. But despite that, she was always financially tight. When I looked at her routine, it was overwhelming. She woke up early, cooked, handled the house, watched her grandkids when asked, took last-minute orders, delivered desserts, came back home, and went to bed late. And what did she say? I can't stop. If I stop, I'll fall apart. But the truth was, she was already falling apart, just on the inside. So I asked her, Marie, which desserts actually make you the most money? She said, the specialty desserts and the gift boxes. Then I asked, and which ones take the most time and barely bring any profit? She answered, the simple treats and the small, last-minute orders. And that's when I showed her something that changes everything. She was spending most of her time on what anyone could do, and very little time on what only she could do exceptionally well. She was working hard, but in the wrong place. And I said a sentence that scares any woman who's always been the strong one. You're going to work less and earn more. She laughed, nervous. But how? I said, for the next 30 days, you're going to make 2 changes. First, you'll choose just 4 days a week to take orders. The other 3 days you'll rest, truly, without guilt. Second, on those 4 days you'll only accept higher value orders. Gift boxes, specialty desserts, curated sets. And I know what you're thinking right now, because she thought the same thing. But I'll lose customers. Yes, you'll lose some, and you'll gain the right ones. That first week she was scared. She told me it felt like she was being irresponsible. But then something interesting happened. When she started saying, I work with special orders, her audience changed. People began to see her as more valuable, and her body started to improve. She slept better. She was less irritable. She stopped crying in secret at the end of the day. And with a clearer mind, she did something she had never done before. She raised her prices. She started offering packages. She started saying no without apologizing. And 1 month later, she wasn't rich, but she could breathe. And for the first time, money actually started to stay. Why? Because Menucha teaches this. Rest isn't weakness. Rest is strategy. When you rest with purpose, 3 things happen. Your body recovers, and you get your presence back. Your mind leaves survival mode, and you start seeing opportunities. Your energy shifts, and people can feel it. And there's a truth almost nobody says out loud, but it's real. Money doesn't chase someone who's begging just to get by. Money moves towards someone who radiates clarity and value. And in the next part, I'm going to give you a simple, practical system to apply Menucha without guilt, and without feeling like you're abandoning your family. Because I know that for a lot of women, the exhaustion doesn't come only from work. It comes from carrying the world on your back. So let's go there now. Right now, I want you to breathe and understand something. Menucha isn't about becoming a different person. It's about stopping the self-punishment. Because I know how the mind of a good woman, a strong woman, works. If she rests, she feels guilty. If she says no, she feels selfish. If she sets a boundary, she thinks she's failing, and that exact pattern drains your energy, and along with it, drains your financial life. So I'm going to give you a simple system, almost ridiculously straightforward, but it changes everything when you actually apply it. The 4-Pack-3 system. For the next 4 weeks, here's what you do. 4 days of intentional work, 3 days of strategic rest. And hold on, strategic rest is not sitting there worrying about what's missing. Strategic rest is rest that protects your energy. Now here's the most important part. On the 4 work days, you only do what has the highest value. I'll repeat it because this has to sink in. You only do what has the highest value. What anyone could do, you start taking out of your hands. And here's the golden rule the wisest women learn with time. When you try to hold everything, you start being valued less. But when you specialize in what truly has weight, you start being respected. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, but how do I do this in my real life? I have bills, I have family, I have responsibilities. That's why I'm going to give you a very practical step-by-step. Step 1. The yes and no. Lists. Today, you're going to make 2 lists. The yes list, high value. The 3 things that truly create results in your life. Money, respect, stability, peace. The no list, low value. Everything that drains your time and energy and gives almost nothing back. This includes tasks, favors, and even conversations that leave you exhausted. And here's something important, especially for women. A lot of people confuse being kind with being available. You can stay kind without continuing to be used. Step 2. Saying no with love. No fighting, no guilt. If someone asks you for something that's on your no list, you'll answer with a simple sentence. I'd like to, but I can't. I'm in a season of taking care of my health and my life. No over-explaining, no justifying, no debating. Because when you explain too much, people think there's room to negotiate. And this is where the code starts protecting you. Step 3. Real rest, the kind of rest that brings money. On your 3 rest days, choose one 20-minute practice that clears your mind. Take a slow walk, sit and breathe without your phone, drink tea in silence, pray in your own way, write 3 lines in a notebook. Today I did my best, and I respect myself. And I'm going to tell you something that may sound strange, but it's true. When you rest with dignity, you stop accepting crumbs, and that changes the kind of opportunities that show up. If this is making sense to you, I want you to do something right now, because it locks a commitment inside you. Write in the comments just 2 words, I deserve. This isn't for me, it's for you, because when a woman writes I deserve, she's telling life, I will no longer treat myself as the last priority. And if you know a friend, a sister, a mother, who's exhausted, living for everyone else, send her this video. You might be the turning point she needs. Now pay attention, because the next part is where many people get it wrong. And that's why money keeps slipping away even when they're doing everything right. Because there's a 3rd principle in this code, and it's the most delicate one. It's not about working, it's about how you give. And I want to warn you gently but clearly, many women after 60 lose money not because they spend it on themselves, but because they give in the wrong way. And when you learn how to give in the right way, what comes back to you is completely different. So stay with me. In the next block, I'm going to show you how to give without losing yourself, how to help without sacrificing yourself, and how to set boundaries without becoming the bad one. This is where your financial life truly begins to turn around. Now I'm going to talk about something that for many good women is harder than any job. Because it doesn't touch your strength, it touches your heart. And I'm going to be very honest with you. After 60, many people continue struggling financially, not because they earn too little, but because they give in the wrong way. And when I say give in the wrong way, I'm not telling you to become cold, selfish, or hard. I'm telling you to stop carrying other people's pain with your own sacrifice. In Jewish tradition, there's a very deep idea. Giving is not about emptying yourself. Giving is about lifting someone up. But many people give out of guilt, and guilt is not love. Guilt is a prison. I want to tell you a story that could be happening on your street. And I want you to listen closely, because this is where the turning point lives. I met a woman, let's call her Beatrice. She was 69, a widow, strong woman, hard worker, big heart. Her income was modest, but enough for her to live with dignity. The problem was this: she had 3 adult daughters, all married, with husbands who worked, and still and every month the daughters asked for money. "Mum, it's the kids' school. Mum, the fridge broke. Mum, I've got a debt. Can you help me out?" And because Beatrice was a mother, she helped. Every month she gave away part of what she had. And to be able to help, what did she do? She cut from herself. She skipped doctor's appointments. She stopped eating as well. She didn't buy even a simple piece of clothing. She lived tight, while the daughters kept asking. Until one day she told me as crying, "I'm afraid to say no and have them think I don't love them." I looked at her and asked a question that changes everything. Do they really need your money? Or do they need your courage? Because sometimes helping with money just keeps a person exactly where they are. They don't grow. They don't learn. They come back asking again. And that's when I taught Beatrice the 3rd principle. The 3rd principle of the code is this: after 60, you don't offer rescue. You offer direction. You don't give money on impulse. You give wisdom with firmness. And I'm going to show you how this works in real life, as simply as possible. I asked Beatrice to make 3 changes. She stopped giving money. She started giving structure. She started giving time with purpose. When the first daughter asked for money again, Beatrice answered like this: "Sweetheart, I love you. And because I love you, I'm going to help you in a different way. I'm going to sit down with you and we're going to organize a budget. For 4 Saturdays, you and I will look at every expense and cut what isn't necessary." The first daughter got angry, because people who receive rescue tend to like rescue. Rescue is comfortable. To the second daughter, Beatrice said, "Instead of giving you money for emergencies, I'm going to teach you how to set aside a small amount every month. We're going to build an emergency fund. In a few months, you won't need to ask anyone." The daughter complained, got emotional, said her mother had changed. To the third daughter, Beatrice said, "I'm not going to give you money, but I can watch the kids 2 afternoons a week so you can take a course and increase your income. Only if you actually commit." At first, all 3 daughters thought Beatrice had become selfish. But do you know what happened? Over time, the daughters began to organize themselves. They began to grow, and most importantly, Beatrice could breathe again. She had money for herself. She started taking care of herself. She started respecting herself. And here's the key point. When a woman respects herself, the world reorganizes around her. Now listen closely. This principle feels almost hypnotic because it touches something very intimate: the fear of disappointing others, the fear of being judged, the fear of losing love. But I'm going to tell you the truth, gently and clearly. Anyone who truly loves you does not need you to destroy yourself to prove it. Practical exercise. Principle 3, 7 days. For the next 7 days, you'll do the following. Every day, practice one act of generosity that follows 3 rules. It does not drain you. It helps the other person grow. It does not leave you feeling guilty. It might be teaching someone something you know, guiding a person who's lost, giving advice you wish someone had given you, introducing 2 people who can help each other, or caring for someone with limits. And every time you do it, say to yourself, "I help with wisdom. I do not abandon myself. Now I want a commitment from you." If you understood this 3rd principle, write in the comments, "I do not abandon myself." It may sound simple, but when you write this, you draw a line in the sand. Because this is the key to the code. Money does not stay where there is guilt and exhaustion. Money stays where there is clarity and value. And in the next block, I'm going to give you the 40-day ritual, the step-by-step routine that brings all of this together into daily life. And if you follow it the way I guide you, you'll start feeling a difference before 2 weeks are even over. Don't leave now. What comes next is where the transformation starts becoming visible. Now I'm going to give you what many people wait the entire video for. Because the 3 principles are the foundation, but what truly changes your life is daily practice. And this is where almost everyone fails. Not because they don't want to change, but because they do it for 1 week and then stop. That's why there's a number that shows up again and again in Jewish tradition: 40. 40 is the number of complete change, not a little push, a crossing. And I want you to imagine this. If for 40 days you change the way you think, rest and act, what do you think your life will look like on day 41? Now listen closely. This ritual is not about magic. It's about reprogramming your rhythm, your body, and your mind, so you become someone who attracts value, not someone who's just trying to survive. I'm going to give it to you in 5 steps, and I'm going to ask one thing of you. Don't complicate it. Keep it simple. Be faithful to it. Do it fully. Step 1. Before getting out of bed, 1 minute. Before you put your feet on the floor, take 5 deep breaths, slow, steady, as if you were telling your body, I am safe, I am here. Because when you wake up anxious, your brain goes straight into emergency mode, and urgency makes you overwork, overgive, overspend, and abandon yourself. 5 breaths. This is your signal to your body. Step 2. The alignment phrase, 20 seconds. Now say quietly, but firmly. Creator, I choose to live with dignity. Show me today what I need to release so abundance can enter. You don't need to be religious for this to work. You just need to be honest. And here's the important part. After you say it, stay silent for a moment and write down the first thing that comes to mind. It will be something simple, fear, guilt, a person, a promise you made that still holds you. Write it down. Don't argue with it. Step 3. The act of value, 2 minutes. Now, instead of promising to change your whole life, you'll choose 1 micro-action per day. Just 1. For example, today, I'll call someone and offer my experience. Today, I'll organize my expenses for 15 minutes. Today, I'll say no to what drains me. Today, I'll rest without guilt. Because the secret is not force, it's consistency. And consistency, for someone who spent her whole life taking care of others, is a form of self-respect. Step 4. Sacred rest, 20 minutes. Now comes the part that brings the biggest results, and also the most resistance. Every day after lunch, set aside 20 minutes. No phone, no TV, no noise. You close your eyes and breathe. This is not a nap. It's about turning the volume down. Because when you rest the right way, your mind starts seeing solutions. And solutions are money. Most people aren't struggling financially because they lack ability. They're struggling because they're too exhausted to notice the doors in front of them. Step 5. Closing the day, 3 minutes. Before going to sleep, write down 3 things. 1 act of wisdom you practiced today. 1 boundary you set, even a small one. 1 act of generosity done with purpose. Then write a final sentence. I gave with wisdom. I respected myself. I am ready to receive. It sounds simple, but this changes your internal pattern, and your internal pattern becomes your destiny. The detail that makes this ritual work, and most people ignore. Now I'm going to tell you the rule that separates those who change from those who just get motivated. You're not allowed to quit. If you miss a day, you start again. Isn't that harsh? Yes, because life has been harsh with you too, and no one ever told you that discipline is the highest form of kindness toward yourself. 40 days in a row. Not perfect, but not giving up. And now let me tell you something. After 10 days, you'll feel a shift. Not just with money, in your face, in your sleep, in your energy. And around day 20, you'll realize something that both hurts and frees you. The problem was never lack of effort. It was lack of direction. And at the end, I'm going to tell you a story that ties all of this together. A real story of someone who thought she was at the end and discovered she was actually at the beginning. Before I tell you that story, I want you to make a 40-day commitment. If you're willing to do this ritual, write in the comments, I accept the 40 days. And if you know a woman who's exhausted, helping everyone else and forgetting herself, send this video to her. Because this might be the turning point she needed to hear. Now stay with me, because the next part is the final story. And I'm going to close by tying the 3 principles together with a real outcome. This is where you understand why money starts finding you, when you stop chasing it the wrong way. Now let me tell you a story that brings everything together. Because maybe you're listening and thinking, okay, but is it still possible for me? It is. Some time ago, a 72-year-old man came to talk to me. He had worked with his hands his entire life, Decades doing the same thing, the same way, with the same effort, until his body finally started pushing back. He looked at me and said something I've never forgotten. I worked my whole life and I have nothing. He wasn't talking only about money. He was talking about dignity, about purpose, and that's when I said to him, "You're not poor. You're just trying to make money the wrong way for this stage of life." I explained the 3 principles, and I gave him the 40-day ritual. In the first days, he doubted it. But he did it anyway. And on day 15, he had the courage to take a small, simple step, a step of wisdom. He started teaching. He started sharing what he knew with someone younger. And when you teach, you rise in life. You stop being labor, and you become a reference. And then what always happens when the code is activated happened. People started looking for him, because the world is full of tired people, hungry for someone with real experience. Not long after that, he wasn't chasing opportunities anymore. He was being called. And the most beautiful part was what he told me at the end. It wasn't the money that saved me. It was feeling like my life had value again. That's what I want for you. Because after a lifetime of taking care of everyone else, you deserve to look at yourself and say, "Now it's my turn." Now let me close this with clarity. If you're over 60, or even if you're getting close, remember this. After this age, money doesn't come from effort. It comes from alignment. You don't need to work more. You need to work better. And you need to remember the 3 principles. Wisdom is worth more than strength. Rest is strategy, not guilt. Right generosity multiplies. Guilt-based generosity destroys. And if you follow the ritual for 40 days, not because someone told you to, but because you decided to respect yourself, you will see your life change from the inside out. Now I'm going to ask you 3 quick things. First, if you're in for the 40 days, comment, "I accept the 40 days. I want to see your commitment here." Second, if this video spoke to you, give it a like. That helps YouTube share it with more women who need to hear this today. Third, subscribe to the channel, because in the next video I'm going to teach you the 3 words you need to say every day to cut guilt, stop self-sacrifice, and start attracting respect and prosperity without fighting life. And I'll warn you, those 3 words sound simple, but they change the way people treat you. May peace walk with you. May your wisdom guide you. And may your rest give your strength back. I'll see you in the next video.